The smaller the p-value, the stronger the evidence that the null hypothesis is false. However, even a very, very low p-value is not absolute proof that the null hypothesis is false. It's possible for us to make a mistake and reject a true null hypothesis. There's a chance that our sample result is really rare and we incorrectly rejected a null hypothesis. When we look at the chance that our sample result is really rare, it means that we can easily have, not easily, but there are sample means that are in the far right or far left tail of the bell curve that have small probabilities, small chances of happening, and they really did happen by chance, not due to what was stated in the alternative hypothesis. So let's look at a grid that helps us understand these types of errors. We call the error type 1 error and type 2 errors. If we look at the actual state could either be that the null hypothesis is true or the null hypothesis is false. So this is what's really happening. Either the defendant is truly innocent or the defendant is guilty. So this is the actual state. If we look at the possible decision that could be made, we can reject the null hypothesis, which means that there's a guilty verdict, or we can fail to reject the null hypothesis, which means there's a not guilty verdict. If the defendant is innocent and we declared him not guilty, which means that the null hypothesis is true and we failed to reject it, we've made the right decision. If the defendant is guilty and we have a guilty verdict, or the null hypothesis is false and we've rejected the null hypothesis, we've also made the correct decision. The problems happen here and here. When the defendant is innocent and we declare the defendant guilty, which basically means the null hypothesis is true, but we've rejected it, we've created a type 1 error. This is basically rejecting a true null hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is really true, it shouldn't have been rejected. But if we rejected it in our test, we've made a type 1 error. A type 2 error occurs if the defendant is guilty and we've said that the defendant is not guilty, which means that the null hypothesis is false, but we failed to reject it. We've made a type 2 error, failing to reject a false null hypothesis. If the null hypothesis is false, then it should be rejected, but the conclusion that we made was fail to reject it, so we've made a type 2 error. When we go through the hypothesis test in the next lecture, next couple lectures I think, we're going to see what a type 1 error means and what a type 2 error means for a particular scenario.